I do not know what weapons will be used in World War III, but I do know that World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. This quote is from Albert Einstein, one of the most renowned scientists in human history. He experienced the two bloodiest wars in human history, namely World War I and World War II. Therefore, he deeply understood the pain and loss, and in the later years of his life, Einstein always feared another global war would occur again. World War III, a war of the greatest powers, will use nuclear weapons, pushing humanity to the brink of extinction. In the years following the end of World War II, the seeds of a Third World War were always looming, such as the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, China's competition for supremacy, and NATO's expansion eastward, prompting Russia to take military action. Most recently, the prolonged 60-year conflict between Israel and Palestine flared up again, drawing international attention. So what would happen if World War III broke out? Let's explore through the following video. Why does war have to happen? Throughout human history, there have always been conflicts of interest between ethnic groups, religions, and groups of people. They compete for influence, and when it reaches the point where it cannot be resolved through negotiation, war becomes inevitable. It also stems from the ambitions of a few individuals, who then drag the masses into battles to fulfill their goals. Throughout human history, the sound of bombs and bullets has never ceased until today. Continually, somewhere in the world, wars break out, causing damage to both infrastructure and the economy, especially human lives. Although there have been many large-scale wars from ancient times to modern times, only 2 wars deserve to be called world wars. They drew millions of people from dozens of countries into a vortex, leaving heavy consequences not only on human lives, but also on the spirit of many generations. These were World War I, which occurred from 1914 to 1918, and World War II, which occurred from 1939 to 1945. Both wars were plots of competition and desire to achieve global dominance. World War I caused severe and catastrophic consequences. About 1.5 billion people were engulfed in flames, 10 million people perished, over 20 million were injured, the European economy was exhausted, and many cities, villages, roads, bridges, and factories were destroyed. World War II was even more horrifying. This was the bloodiest conflict in human history. The human casualties were between 70 to 80 million people, with more civilians killed than military personnel. Tens of millions of people lost their lives in genocide, from starvation or from disease. When this war ended, the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing tens of thousands of civilians. The radiation effects lingered for many generations. Wars always bring sorrow to both the winners and the losers. After World War II, with the establishment of the United Nations and peace organizations, humanity hoped to silence the guns. However, not long after, the Cold War broke out between the 2 largest superpowers, the Soviet Union and the United States. It was not as brutal as the 2 world wars, but it was a fierce arms race and a proxy war between these 2 countries in other regions of the world. This was the time of the Korean War and particularly the Vietnam War, haunting many people not only in these 2 countries but also in many other nations around the world. People always fear the seeds of a Third World War. Not long after the 2 world wars, the endurance reached its limit with the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. The Cold War was at its peak. The 2 superpowers, the Soviet Union and the United States, were racing for nuclear weapons, the terrifying weapons capable of destroying the entire world. The cause was the U.S. building multiple military bases encircling the Soviet Union in Europe, located in countries such as the UK, Italy, and Turkey. From these positions, missiles could be launched to Moscow and many other important cities. In retaliation, the Soviet Union transported numerous nuclear warhead missiles to Cuba, a neighboring country to the U.S. in the Caribbean. After the Cuban Revolution succeeded in 1959, the country followed the socialist path. The U.S. considered this a rebellious act and severed diplomatic relations with this Latin American country. At dawn on September 14, 1962, a U.S. reconnaissance plane discovered the first signs of a Soviet intermediate-range missile base in Havana. According to experts' calculations, if war broke out in just 5 minutes, the US would lose 8 million people. At the same time, missiles in Europe were ready to target Moscow and surrounding areas. The whole world held its breath before the threat of a nuclear war. As Albert Einstein once said, if World War III breaks out, nuclear weapons will be widely used, the world will be leveled, and humanity will return to the Stone Age. Fortunately, that did not happen. The leaders of the US and the Soviet Union agreed to withdraw the missiles and resolve everything through peaceful negotiation. And at this moment, humanity breathed a sigh of relief. The world also avoided other comprehensive wars after. However, the threat of a Third World War never disappears. Why is that? Because the conflict between the West and the East never ends. Western countries, led by the United States, always want to control the entire world, putting everything under their control. Naturally, other powers like Russia, the successor of the Soviet Union, and China, the rising dragon, will never accept that scenario. And many small wars everywhere could expand into a world war. First hotspot could be the countries caught between Russia and the West, which are numerous Eastern European countries such as Ukraine, Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus, Estonia, and Finland in Northern Europe. This will be the battlefield where the US and Russia's allies clash. Most of these countries have joined the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, led by the US. And of course, Russia will not sit idly by when its borders are threatened. War has occurred in this area, and it is hard to know how far it will spread. The second potential battlefield is the Middle East, where there have long been religious conflicts between Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. The focal point is the relationship between Israel and Palestine. The cause is that in 1948, the West supported the establishment of the State of Israel. The main reason is the aspiration to return to the homeland of thousands of Jewish exiles around the world. They wanted their own homeland, country recognized by the international community after thousands of years of suffering and humiliation. And finally, the Jews achieved their wish. However, the place they called home was where the Palestinian and Islamic nation had long lived. They believed the returning Jews had taken their land, especially the sacred Jerusalem revered by many religions. The recent conflict between Hamas and Israel shows that this issue is difficult to resolve. Thousands of civilians have shed blood, and violence is escalating. The third potential battlefield is the Asia-Pacific region. It involves a rising power, China. The US fears this dragon will threaten its hegemonic position, though it has sought every way to surround and constrain China with numerous allies, such as Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and the Philippines. However, China will undoubtedly seek to break free and exert its influence globally. They are eyeing distant regions such as Africa and Latin America, which are considered the backyard of the West and the US. Sooner or later, these two competitors will face off in a confrontation. The threat of a Third World War is present. The US itself benefited greatly from the two bloody world wars in the 20th century. They were far from the main battlefields in Europe and Asia. The country was not devastated by war. Additionally, the US gained a lot of money from selling weapons to the warring sides. The wars caused many brilliant scientists to migrate to the US to escape and contributed to building a powerful America as it is today. However, if World War III happens, Americans may smell gunpowder right at their borders. Russia and China are joining forces and influencing the US's backyard in Latin America. And the US's soft powers such as the petrodollar and military economic cooperation with allies are being targeted by Russia and China. So will a Three Kingdoms scenario occur in the future? Or will Russia and China decide to join forces to overthrow the US's throne? Recently, the vice chairman of Russia's Security Council, former President Dmitry Medvedev, warned of a Third World War if the West does not remove hostile attitude. An interesting question arises. If World War III breaks out, where is the safest place? There are a few options. Most of them are remote and on islands. First, it is the distant northern European country. This country has a geographical position far from the great powers that could bring the dangers of a global conflict such as the US, North Korea, Russia, and Iran. Similarly, in the Northern Hemisphere, there is New Zealand, which has an isolated island position, rich resources, and can be economically self-sufficient in case of isolation. Additionally, countries like Switzerland, Iceland, and some northern European countries can be considered. However, since Europe has always been the main site of the First and Second World Wars, it is also unlikely to be completely safe. After all, no one wants war to happen. It is a catastrophic scene. Millions of families will be separated, and the physical and mental consequences will be extremely severe and prolonged. No one truly wins because the price to pay is too high. The whole world is holding its breath. The future will tell, but humanity still hopes that a third world war will never happen. Thank you for watching the video. For now, goodbye, and see you again.